Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Everything Vaguely Paranormal. I'm Shelley Pruitt, and my partner in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith. Where the hell is Mr. Ryan Roberts?
Well, I was going to say that you noticed that something was majorly missing from the podcast tonight. My hat, as always. So,
yeah, you don't have on your hat, but your hair looks good anyway.
No, oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
No, Ryan got stuck in the blood pressure machine at the grocery store, so he's still trying to deal with that and get himself out. So he does know
he's not supposed to put his wiener in it, right?
I don't know. Maybe we should tell him next time we talk to him.
Oh, well, live and learn, right?
Oh, let him have his moment. It's all good.
It's
just 15 minutes of fame.
Hey, you know what? From what I understand, the Austin PD don't do shit about things like that. Anyway, so welcome.
Oh, we're going to kick it off with that note, huh?
I have a reason for why I say things like that.
You got the two chaotic energies tonight,
yes,
by the way.
Yes, you do. Sorry, guys. Buckle up. It's the two chaotics on the screen, and God only knows what will be said and done this evening. But we want to welcome you guys back to another episode of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. And tonight we're going to be giving you the conclusion of the Madalyn Murray O'Hair story.
Yeah, because you left me with a massive ass cliffhanger last week, you bitch.
I know, but that's okay. I'm sure I got called that by quite a few people. But I have to tell you, it does not do her justice to tell this in just one sitting because she is more complex. And I think what you know about her is only the mean woman. And you don't really know how she became to be that mean woman. And that's kind of what part one was for.
That's
so
true.
Now I'm going to tell you what part two is about. And again, disclaimer, I will not sanitize history to make anyone happy that is disrespectful to anybody who lived through it. Also, there will be foul language. There will probably be languages that you don't like. In that case, turn it off if you're delicate. Yes. And number three, I don't care what your religious beliefs, opinions, or texts or whatever are. Don't put them in our comments. I love you all equally. You're not going to convert anyone, and neither am I. So let's just love each other and hear a good story, okay?
I love the disclaimers on these two episodes, this one and the last one. Foul language on this show? What?
I know. Don't be too
I'm
shocked.
appalled.
So let's go ahead and jump into it. So in the relatively God-fearing America of the 60s and 70s, Madalyn Murray O'Hair was like a big-time wrestling villain. I mean, she was bold and loud and big and obscene, but she had not made history in a very long time. In fact, the godless radical who took great pleasure in calling herself the most hated woman in America had kind of fallen off the cultural and political radar screen since her cantankerous heyday in the 60s, when she had picked noisy fights with the system, pushing prayer out of public school, trying to get in God We Trust taken off coins, and suing the Pope. So,
my favorite.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
But few people noticed when the 76-year-old disappeared in September of 1995, along with John Garth, her younger son, and Robin, who was 30 at the time. Now, when the authorities were finally notified, people kind of seemed glad to see her go. And now Madalyn was a celebrity again, not only because of the mystery of her disappearance, but because it was one of the strangest cases in Texas history. So here we go. I'm going to pick up kind of where I left off with Madalyn and her vast empire. So Madalyn and her younger son, John Garth, and granddaughter Robin settled in Austin. And in 1988, Madalyn established the American Atheist General Headquarters, and she called it AAGHQ for short. I'm not sure that's any easier to say. It doesn't even spell a word.
Mouthful.
It's not like AARP, like ARP. It's okay. AAGHQ for short. I'm probably going to call it the American Atheists. Yeah. But by the 80s also, the talk shows had kind of stopped calling, but the donations kept coming in and they kept the organization afloat. And they came from all over. Atheists left their estates to Madalyn in their wills. And they gifted the organization with stocks and antiques and paintings. And along with those small dollar donations that were mailed in, there were also larger ones from contributors like Hustler magazine mogul Larry Flint. He's a big fan of Madalyn's. And Madalyn had also said that she had learned from Jerry Falwell that if you create a crisis every month, people are more likely to send you money. And there was a crisis almost every month.
Well, if that's the case, my life is a crisis. My Cash App is...
Shut up. It's not about you. So Madalyn, John Garth, and Robin, they lived well. Madalyn's home was worth $300,000 and it was paid off. She had squirreled money in offshore accounts and had lots of shell corporations and other investment properties and businesses. But her prized possession was her Charles E. Stevens American Atheist Archives, which was basically a library of atheist history. And in the 1980s, it was valued at over $3 million.
Damn.
Yeah. So, with this constitutional win that she had on the First Amendment rights, she had actually earned herself a place on J. Edgar Hoover's notorious FBI watch list. But you see, Madalyn was used to being watched and spied on, and to be fair, her paranoia was not unfounded. And she was also used to being betrayed. Her son Bill had run off and dumped Robin on her. And whenever he ran off, I didn't tell y'all this part of the story. Good old Bill, he stole over $5,000 in bearer bonds and her atheist a magazine mailing list. We don't know what he did with that, probably sold it. And then Bill becomes a born again Christian. And then he started to fight to overturn that landmark Supreme Court ruling that he and his mother had achieved together.
Oh, I got tired of mama's shit.
Oh,
okay.
Well, I think Mama got tired of his shit too. So, because if Bill was the betrayer and was cast in the role of Judas, then John, Garth, and Robin, they could do no wrong, and they were her loyal disciples. She wrote in her diary that John, Garth, and Robin were hers, but Bill belonged to her mother.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So this trio had this kind of reminds me of the three of us. The trio had a very unhealthy codependent relationship.
Oh, that part.
Yeah,
oh, yeah, totally.
Part, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that part. Yeah, got it.
And the three misfits did everything together. Again, still sound familiar here? Okay. And they controlled most of the boards of the American Atheist Corporation. And they just kept rotating the position between president, vice president, and treasurer, just amongst the three of them.
Okay.
They worked together. They ate together. They took vacations together. They lived in the same house on Greystone Drive in Northwest Austin. And they trusted no one except maybe their dogs, because they were big animal lovers. They loved animals.
Yeah. I mean, I trust my dog more than some people, but.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have to tell you that John Garth, he was a mountain of a man. He had a very soft voice and a slight speech impediment. He couldn't say his R's. And so he sounded a bit like a cross between Elmer Fudd and Barry White. Go ahead, give it a shot.
Nope.
I'm John Goff Mowey. Okay, but make it cool and make it sound like Barry White. So just picture Elmer Fudd saying John Garth Murray, and you have what he sounds like.
John Goff Murray.
Mowey. He could not say the R's. Yeah.
All right, roll with it.
So he was smart, but he was no match for Madalyn. But sweet little John Garth, he was also naive. Many thought that if Madalyn wasn't taking care of him, he would have been homeless and destitute. Madalyn even had to go with him to buy a car, because when he'd been allowed to go buy one on his own, he bought an overpriced lemon. And not long after that, he got involved in a deal. And it was going to earn him $20,000 for just a $2,000 investment. And he showed up at the location and traded duffel bags with the investor and drove away. But when he went to inspect his profit, his bags contained only shredded paper. His bag actually had money in it.
Oh, man. Yeah, if it's too good to be true, it probably fucking is, you dumbass.
But John Garth was naive. And a quick little side note, in 1986, Madalyn allowed John Garth to be appointed president of the American Atheists. And this was in 1986. But Madalyn, she still ran the show because John Garth had no management skills. And it didn't take long for him to alienate chapters of the organization, because no one in the organization wanted him taking over. They all despised him, and they called him a big doofus with no social skills. But Robin, she was just like Madalyn. She was tough, straightforward, with a mouth that could make a sailor blush. And Robin was smart. Robin was smarter than all of them, even Madalyn. And she graduated high school as a National Merit Scholar at the age of 16. And she was accepted into Brown University. But Madalyn decided that she should go to the University of Texas, to save money. She didn't want to pay that out-of-state tuition.
Yeah, no shit.
So Robin attended on a full academic scholarship and graduated with honors at 19. 3 years to get through a 4-year university, 3 years.
Damn.
And so Madalyn tasked her with digitizing and maintaining the entire American Atheist organization files, shell corporations and all. Robin also edited the group's publication and managed the Atheist Library. And Robin, she ran that office with an iron fist. Madalyn was the queen. John Garth was the spoiled little prince. But the day-to-day nitty-gritty was Robin. Now, both Robin and John Garth, they were both totally devoted to Madalyn. Now, Robin couldn't do everything by herself, so they did have an office staff. And Madalyn, she hired all kinds of people. And the workers often stole from them. But she would hire almost anyone that would apply. She was such a terrible boss, she couldn't really afford to be picky. And many of Madalyn's employees were like her. They were outsiders. One was a man who had done time in federal prison for threatening President Reagan. Another was a brush gay activist with a phone sex business. A Vietnam vet who had lost his religion under fire. An Illinois ex-con with a violent past. And there were also college students, Catholics, and working stiff atheists. Some of them just looking for a job. Some were eager to work for an American hero. But child, she did not return that admiration. She was frustrated with all of them. See, Madalyn was a bit of an elitist, and she thought that most people were beneath her, especially when it came to intelligence. And according to an ex-staffer, the entire family belittled everyone. They were always telling their employees that they were stupid and they didn't know what they were doing. And he said you could always hear the three of them yelling obscenities to each other and doors slamming. And once, after severing ties with a disgruntled employee, Madalyn contested his unemployment claim, telling the unemployment investigator that the man had possibly murdered people. And you know what? I think he has sex with animals.
Oh my God. All that's going through my head is like, you were talking about our codependency relationship that we have. I'm like, this is probably what our producer thinks of us, and is going to be in her tell-all whenever she's like, fuck this shit, I'm
exactly.
out. Just kidding. Love you, Brittany. Please don't cut me off the screen.
But I'm going to tell you that this unholy trio was inseparable. I hope I've made that very clear. They do everything together. And let me tell you how wild it gets. They were so inseparable that when Madalyn broke her leg, John Garth waited on her hand and foot. He would wash and style her hair, and he even helped her bathe. Ooh.
I love you, Shelley, but I ain't doing that. I ain't going that far.
I'm going to tell my child right now that it's okay, hire a nurse. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nobody needs to see this. Nobody.
I'm gonna get you a little cute one to take care of you.
Okay. That'll be fine. So the family ate all their meals together. And when Madalyn decided that she would only bathe once a week, Robin and John Garth decided to follow suit.
I have an issue with God.
Yeah,
I bathe twice a day.
I usually do too.
Once at night,
possible.
once in the morning, once at night. Yeah,
if possible. But it's got to be at least once a day. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, at least once a day. So
yeah. But here's something that's actually, I'm not sure if it's sweet or not. I couldn't quite figure it out. You see, there were lots of times though that Madalyn would get depressed, and John Garth and Robin would sit in the car for hours sometimes waiting on her until she emerged from her room ready to leave. And they were supposed to be somewhere and they couldn't find Madalyn. So John Garth, fearing that she might have been kidnapped or something, he went looking for her. And he found her car with the keys in the ignition and the door open. And she was on the side of a road near a wooded area. He desperately began to search for her. And when he found her, she was sitting alone on a log, crying. He walked away and waited at the car until she had returned. He didn't think that she would have wanted him to see that. And these episodes would happen every so often. Perhaps she was contemplating her life, or maybe her death. Her husband, Richard O'Hair, he never had held a full-time job after he married Madalyn. So pretty much like everybody else, he just quit working once she was there. His life was spent drinking, tending to a flock of pigeons that he kept in a coop in the backyard, and cheating on her with her secretaries. And he had a very bad habit of leaving love letters to the secretaries laying around where she could find them.
Oh, what a dick. I'm sorry.
And a few days before Richard died of cancer in 1978, Madalyn wrote a journal entry that read, and I'm quoting, "How he loved and hated me both, and was both repelled by and attracted to me. Yet how dependent he was on me. And yet I played this out to the end for him, to make him look good to the world. I hope that I can face death with as much dignity as he does." How awful would it be to feel like the person you're married to both loves you and hates you and is repelled by you? That's sad. That's a sad entry.
She's obviously in it. She's in it for the wrong. I mean, she said, "I did it for him."
Yeah.
Like that. Even to her unhappiness.
He's dying of cancer. Yeah. And she stays. She still pays for everything. Now, some people who definitely don't like her say she just stayed married to him so that she could get his, government pension where he passed away. But she didn't have a problem divorcing anybody else, and she didn't need his money.
Right.
So, because it would make her look terrible if she divorced him when he was dying of cancer. But this is how she felt like he really felt about her.
Damn.
Now, here's your opposite end of the spectrum. On December 25th of 1988, her brother Irv had a massive stroke. And Madalyn made a journal entry then too. And it said, quote, "If I know Bill, he checked him into a charity ward somewhere, and now he will tell the media the story of my cold, cold heart." And then a few days later, she wrote in her journal again, quoting, "Irv is apparently a dead man, and I don't give a tinker's damn. He'll die like he lived. A leech on someone as he runs up one hell of a hospital bill. I have not one fond memory of that man."
God damn.
Madalyn did not pay for that funeral, by the way.
Wow. I kind of, you know what I kind of wish? I wish she could be able to write my my obituary.
Hey, she used to write campaign speeches for Larry Flint. I bet she could make it
I bet she'd make one hell of a damn obituary for me.
That's right. She wrote nothing in her diary of her mother Lena's passing. Not a word. Now, from 1963 on, after being granted nonprofit status for the American Atheist, she opened hundreds of nonprofits under the American Atheist Organization umbrella, which many of them were used to hide her wealth from the public and from the IRS. She hated the IRS. She called the IRS, she called taxes robbery. Okay. A lot of people might agree with that.
I'm like, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find anybody in our comments
That's
who.
Now, she took her inspiration from the Catholic Church. It was their rules, but she was just playing the game, and she played it very well. And she hid all her money and all of her assets like this because since she sued everyone, in turn, she was always getting sued. So she didn't want anybody to get anything from her. I mean, whatever. I don't know. But in 1991, the IRS did start investigating Madalyn for unpaid taxes. And the IRS determined that the American Atheist Organization was okay because it was a nonprofit, but that courtesy didn't extend to the O'Hair family. You see, Madalyn had not been including the family's living expenses, salary, and lavish lifestyle as income. She had even written herself checks to boost her Social Security checks to the legal limit as high as it could be. So she wrote herself checks to make sure it got bumped up to that amount. Just defrauding the government a little bit because hell, what the hell? She'd been paying taxes. They wanted money from her. She could get some money back from them. But the IRS, they wanted their cut. And they went after the family in civil court. Now, see, they filed in civil court instead of criminal court, because if it was in criminal court, the IRS was going to have to figure out that vast network of shell corporations, investment properties, businesses, and everything else that was under the American Atheist Organization umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
And civil court was kind of a quicker and easier way to get things done. Robin and John Garth, it was found out, also owed $750,000 in back taxes on money they'd been receiving since 1980.
Oh,
shit. I know.
Oh shit. Well, that's exactly why she did it, though. I mean, you create all these businesses, you create LLCs and business names and all this stuff.
Put it all
You do
under
it all.
the name of the church. Do you know how many properties the Vatican has? Do you know how many different entities fall under the Vatican umbrella?
Right.
It was their rules. Madalyn just decided if those were the rules, she was going to play by them.
She's going to play by it.
That's right. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, and she decided, why not?
Till the IRS said, "Oh, no."
Well, no. The American Atheists were fine.
Well, yeah, that's true. Where she screwed up was not
way.
Including everything else.
That's right. It didn't pay for her lavish lifestyle, her salary,
girl.
and her home. So, anyway, in 1993, and 1993 was a bad year for Madalyn. She and son John Garth were in the midst of litigation over the ownership of an atheist publication called The Truth Seeker. Now, Madalyn, she had tried to take over the $14 million fortune of James Hervey Johnson, who was the publisher of the magazine in San Diego. She even went so far as to print stock certificates showing herself as president of the company. Well, the magazine countered with a racketeering claim and demanded $7 million in damages. Now, that August, John Garth traveled to New Zealand. Allegedly, he was there to find out about the country's extradition policies.
Mm-hmm.
And this was only alleged because it's alleged that an ex-staffer saw facts from a New Zealand bank that showed that $250,000 had been transferred into an account that only insiders knew about. And Madalyn, she began working furiously to hide her assets, including the $3 million library. And she was doing that in anticipation of actually losing this lawsuit that was filed, the countersuit that was filed against them in San Diego. And at the end of that summer, half the staff was let go. Well, lucky for her, that November, the Truth Seeker lawsuit ended in a mistrial. So she skated. She got away. Everything was dropped. The party line, however, was that the American Atheists were broke. They were cash poor. And Madalyn, she got real good at begging for money, claiming I can't say the word, poverty. There we go. And fabricating catastrophe. Suddenly, I'm John Garth Murray. I can't say my R's. And the money just kept pouring in. Also in 1993, Madalyn was distracted. While Madalyn was distracted by fighting this IRS court case, David Waters walked in to the building, and he wanted to apply for the typesetter job that was listed in the paper.
Sorry, not that haircut.
Oh, child, he had a slick back,
come on,
gaudy
haircut.
Style, slick back, gaudy style haircut, and a quiet confidence, and he looked like he was born in a leather jacket. Well, now Robin, she was in charge of everything in the office. And it was her job to background check and test everyone that applied. And during her interview with Mr. Waters, Madalyn stormed in and just started yelling at Robin over some paperwork. She was just chewing her out. And when she finished, she noticed old David Waters was sitting there. And child, Madalyn liked what she saw, so she hired him on the spot. Now, perhaps had she let Robin do her job, Madalyn would have found out that all of these degrees that he had from the University of Illinois were earned while he had been in jail. You see, in 1960, David Waters was riding around with friends and he wanted to go see a girl. The driver of the car said no, and David got mad and started a fight. The driver pulled over and ordered David out of the car. David got out, but he also yanked the driver out with him, and he beat him to death and then ran over his legs and stole the man's car.
Holy shit. All because he was like, no, like, you gotta go.
Yeah, wouldn't take him to see a girl.
What
Now, Waters was that's how nutty this kid was as a juvenile. So Waters was a minor at the time, and he only served 10 years for the murder. Not long after, he was sent back to jail for forgery, and he served 4 more years. And soon after being released, he was sent back to jail for a year for assaulting his prostitute mother, beating her with a broomstick, and urinating on her.
Oh man, come on. That a piece of shit.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. But see, Madalyn didn't let Robin do her job. So, unaware of David Waters' criminal background, within months, he was promoted from typesetter to office manager, and he was tasked with cataloging the archives, and he had access to the books. January of 1994, Madalyn had the contents of the Atheist library shipped from Houston to Kansas City and put in storage in an attempt to hide it from the government. If she did lose that IRS case, she was not going to lose her life's work. That same month, John Garth got a call from the bank telling him that $70,000 in government bearer bonds had been called in for redemption. I mean, that basically means they just need to be cashed.
Right,
You know,
right.
They've
Yeah.
reached their limit. You got to bring them in.
Yeah, your number's been called, so to speak.
That's right.
Like, come on.
So John Garth went to the safe to retrieve the bonds, and they were gone, along with some of the American Atheist organization's checks.
Oh,
Somebody had
shit.
robbed them. So they called the cops, and the cops kind of looked around, but they figured, you know what, you guys, this is an interior safe. This has to be an inside job. So they didn't investigate. They told Madalyn she needed to check her people. And to make matters worse, Madalyn had no insurance on anything at the headquarters.
Oh, shit.
You got to remember, she was a Depression era kid. She didn't
Yep.
trust banks, and she was used to handling everything herself. And it seemed like every time she trusted, they betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
So she questioned the staff, and getting no answers, she fired a bunch of people. And her trusted inner circle drew even closer. But David Waters made the cut, and he was given keys to the headquarters and to the family home. On March 30th of 1994, within months, a second robbery occurred. When the family went to San Diego to deal with an IRS case, they left Waters in charge of the office along with the keys and the security codes. And Mr. John Garth, in his infinite wisdom, also left him signed blank checks.
Oh, come on.
In case of an emergency, Mom.
Oh, my God. Come on, man. What? Just here's our bank account. Just whatever. Take what you want. It's all good. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, well, when they returned 2 weeks later, it was obvious that something was wrong. The parking lot was empty. No time cards had been punched. The mail was overflowing, and the doors were locked. On the answering machine, Madalyn heard a message from Waters saying, "I quit." The emergency checks that John Garth left behind were also missing. So Madalyn called around to the staff members to try to find out what in the hell is going on. And staffers all told her that David Waters told them that they were laid off by order of John Garth. So in a panic, John Garth called the bank, and he found that $50,000 had been taken out of the accounts. And again, the family called the law. Yeah. John Garth just like, oh, shit. He done messed up. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. I mean, oh, man. Okay, sorry. I don't want to cut. I don't want to cut your story out because you got to the part where they called the law. I'm intrigued at what the law does at this point.
Well, being that everyone had said that David Waters was the person that had told them all to leave, and being that David Waters more than likely took off with the checks, April 29th of 1984, 2 weeks later, an arrest warrant was issued for David Waters. And Waters is charged with theft by appropriation, which is the second-degree felony. And again, police didn't really investigate. The vibe around the police department seemed to be that She deserved it. She's a mean old lady. She deserves it. And this infuriated Madalyn. And she went back into fighting mode. She called the police nonstop, sometimes several times a day, to ask if they'd caught the goddamn thief yet. So finally, getting tired of Madalyn, the police finally asked, and the key word is ask. They didn't tell him to come in. They asked David Waters to come into the office and please explain his side. They needed to get it cleared up. And Waters did. Waters tells the cops that he told them that John Garth left him with signed checks, and he cashed them. Waters then told the cops that John Garth had told him to take $100,000 from the account, and that $15,000 of it was a fee for him, and he gave the rest of it to John Garth in case the family needed to make a run for it if they lost the IRS case. And he continued saying, I just did what I was told and I took my commission.
Oh, man.
Now, had the cops done even a cursory investigation, they would have known that the IRS case was still ongoing and no judgment had been made yet. They took David Waters at his word. There was no theft here, and that was good enough for the cops. Waters was released on his own recognizance, and the Austin PD never ran a background check or looked to see if Waters had a record.
Wow. $120,000 total goes missing.
Mm-hmm.
And this man just goes, I was doing what I was told.
You know what? That's good enough for us.
But the shitty part is they set him up perfectly for that. I mean, they handed him everything and left him sign checks. So his story in their eyes could check
plausible.
Out. Yeah.
It's possible.
Oh, wow.
But the truth was, David Waters had been staking out the American Atheist headquarters from the beginning. He had been taking documents and poring over books to create his alibi. When the case went to the DA, where it sat uninvestigated and unsolved, Madalyn kept trying to get them to investigate, but was told they really needed that she really needed to consider Mr. Waters standing in the community. Why do I give a fuck what a murderer standing in the community is? It's a murderer. But see, Madalyn doesn't know this. Madalyn doesn't know this.
Right.
Okay. But all she sees is somebody saying, little lady, sit down, calm down. This is a good man. We've talked to him.
Well, and it also doesn't help that she's led her life the way that she's led it. She's extremely freaking polarizing. She's on way this end of the damn spectrum.
She wasn't nice when she called.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, come on. I mean, she screamed in a court case in the last episode where she's like, I didn't fuck him. How'd I get these fucking people?
Right.
I mean, come on.
When she called, she said, have you caught the goddamn thief yet?
Yeah.
She's
not the most poised and graceful about how she goes about it.
No, she's a grandmotherly cactus. Yes. Well, now under fire from Madalyn and basically fed up with the old lady, 3 months later, in July of 1994, the Austin PD finally runs a background check on David Waters. And they're like, oh. Uh-oh.
Are you...
Okay, yeah, we'll go pick him up.
Are you fucking kidding me?
3 months later.
3 months later.
She has harangued them for 3 solid months. And finally, and they probably ran it just to shut her up. And then they're like,
probably.
Okay, yeah, Madalyn, we're going to go pick him up. Don't you worry about it. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, my God. Wow.
Now, Waters, he was indicted for grand theft after they learned about all of his crimes. But they let him out on bail. So Madalyn held a press conference, and she demanded that the judge in the trial recuse himself because he and Madalyn, they'd had bad blood. But the judge refused and delayed the hearing until a year later in 1995. So not only did he say, I'm going to stay on this, you're going to have to wait another year.
Yeah.
He gave her the middle finger in public, basically. Well, on May 22nd of 1995, Waters did plead guilty to theft, and he got 10 years probation from the judge. And then he was told he had to pay restitution. If he did everything he could and everything that he should, the crime would be expunged from his record. Now
How much
this
in
did
restitution did he have to pay? Do you know?
54,000.
What?
That was the number. Well, they couldn't get him for the other. They weren't sure. But this one, he was pretty much caught on,
Yeah.
So that didn't sit well with Madalyn. So she asked, well, can I get interest on the money? Because if not, it's otherwise like I gave a loan to a felon, which I didn't. The request was denied. Then she said, I want a restraining order granted against David Waters because actually by now she was legitimately afraid of him now that she knew his record.
Right.
Request denied. Now, on top of everything else, Madalyn was suffering from diabetes, high blood pressure, and dizziness. Her feet had swollen up so badly, it was so painful from the diabetes that she couldn't wear shoes anymore, and she had to use a wheelchair or a walker to get around. But nobody scams Madalyn Murray O'Hair and gets away with it. She unleashed a full force of her disdain for Waters in a now very famous 6-page essay for the July 1995 issue of the American Atheist newsletter. And in the story, she revealed everything that her private investigation had uncovered about Waters, including his crimes, including his crimes and the fact that he pissed on his mother. It was an angry and hateful rant, which described in embarrassing detail his lifelong love affair with criminal activities, prison sentences, and child. She ripped him a new asshole.
She ain't playing.
I think in that article, and I'm trying to remember, and I'm pretty sure this is the one, she questioned his sexuality. She wondered if he ever had sex with animals. She called him everything but a Christian, which to her actually was an insult too.
Right.
So yeah, she ripped him a new asshole. And Madalyn wanted, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's why you don't piss off the person with the microphone.
Or the person with the pen. That's right.
Yeah. I'm just going to say it.
Madalyn wanted to let all the followers know just what was going on and leave a record of these events just in case. And Madalyn, she tittered with glee as her poison pen wrote the expose of Waters. And then just to be sure she was safe, she installed a 7-foot chain link fence around the top of the American Atheist headquarters and typed it with cyclone barbed wire. Because to her, the world was officially a hostile environment. She had been persecuted for 35 years for just not believing in God. And now she felt at war with everyone. And she often talked about getting away from it all, just leaving town and disappearing. Now, a little problem. David Waters was a subscriber to the American Atheist newsletter. And he saw that story. And it made him angry. How dare she just not let it go? The war had escalated even further, and now Waters felt entitled to seek revenge. In July of 1995, Danny Fry, a small-time con and jailhouse acquaintance of Waters, arrives in Austin and meets up with Waters and another known felon named Gary Paul Carr. In August of 1995, more than ever before, Madalyn, John, and Robin were alone. And they went on vacation to Virginia just to get away from all of it.
Mm-hmm.
They returned to Austin and they bought a plane ticket for September to visit New York. Because, child, they were going to pick at the Pope. They were excited about this. They were looking forward to it.
Her and the Pope, man.
I don't know.
She go picketing.
She
go
hates
suing.
She go. Oh, yeah. But the mystery actually begins on August the 28th of 1995. Employees of the American Atheist organization showed up for work at the global headquarters, and they discovered that the front door was padlocked shut. And a note was posted that read, "The Murray O'Hair family has been called out of town on an emergency basis. We do not know how long we'll be gone at the time of the writing this memo." Well, now this puzzled them, but they began their workday and started opening the mail, and they discovered a statement from a bank in New Zealand that they had never heard of. detailing an account in O'Hair's name, which contained close to $1 million. And the entire O'Hair family was gone. Madalyn, her son John Garth, and her granddaughter Robin vanished. Concerned associates of the O'Hairs tried reaching out to them on John's cell phone, and they succeeded. They got John Garth, who told him that they were away on unspecified business in San Antonio, and they shouldn't be contacted. And John Garth said everything's fine, but her friends told the authorities that they weren't so sure. You could tell everything was not okay, said Ellen Johnson, who took over as interim president of the American Atheists Association.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Spike Tyson, I love that name. That's a dude's real name. Spike Tyson, who was a member of the Inner Circle, should have known where the family was. You see, he had been a security guard, Madalyn's personal security guard, for over 20 years. And she always let him know her travel plans and where the family would be. And after a couple of days without contact, Spike went to the O'Hair home and found their 3 dogs roaming around the yard unattended. Now, this was unusual because Madalyn's little mutt dog would viciously fight with Robin's 2 Cocker Spaniels. So the dogs were always kept separated. Sound like the dog was a lot like its owner. Yeah. So Spike, he fed the dogs and he left a note and went on his way. He returned the next time and found that the note and the dogs were gone. A few days later, Ellen, the vice president of the American Atheist Organization, got a call from John Garth that told her to open an account in New Jersey so that funds could be received from a large atheist trust that would be transferring assets from New Zealand. Now, Ellen thought the request was odd, but she didn't question it because she thought it came from Madalyn. And then Phil Donahue started calling. He was taping his last show in 1995, and he wanted Madalyn, his first guest, to return as his last guest.
Shut the fuck up.
But no answer came. Now they're really worried because this publicity hound isn't seeking the spotlight.
Uh-huh.
That is strange indeed. So in September of 1995, John Garth got in touch with Spike, but he still wouldn't tell Spike where they were. He only gave instructions on how to take care of the business, who to pay, and who to call. John Garth also got in touch with Ellen and asked her to FedEx 2 corporate checks for expenses to the bank. So Ellen sent the checks, and she also included a personal check, her own personal check, for $1,000 in the FedEx envelope. Why? She never says. But it was my guess that she thought if they needed money for something,
Mm-hmm.
that might be a quicker way to get it, to just cash her personal check to them. Again, I find that odd too, because you tell me to send you a couple of checks, Blake. I'm not just going to add in one of mine for $1,000. I'm going to send.
Oh, come on, Shelly. God, what kind of friend are you?
I'm a great friend, but not $1,000 great friend.
Okay, maybe 100. 100?
Maybe.
Okay.
But I'd send it in cash because why would you want to have to wait to get to bank?
That's true.
And plus, too, not traceable if it's cash.
Just $100, shitty friend. Anyways, go ahead, I guess.
But Ellen also got a call from Robin during this time. And Ellen said Robin sounded distracted and scared. But even Robin wouldn't tell her where they were. In November of 1995, the O'Hair family had been missing for 3 months. And nobody seemed exceptionally worried until Madalyn was a no-show for her favorite activity, picketing the Pope. You see, I'm telling you.
Wait a minute. Nobody has seen her in 3 freaking months because she doesn't go to picket the Pope. That's the final straw.
Mm-hmm. you see, that was one of Madalyn's shticks, to regularly pick at the Pope. And if he was there, she was there. And she hadn't missed a good Pope picket in 40 years, so something was definitely wrong.
Okay. All right.
That was proof enough for a lot of them that shit's not right.
Okay.
So, again, she had to go picket that Pope. So, Spike again tried to get in touch with John Garth, but no luck. And Spike made a third and final trip to the home to find that the mail was piled up. All the plants were dead. And he also found a letter from a kennel stating that the bill had not been paid. They would either have to pay the bill or come and pick up the dogs. And if they didn't, the dogs would be sent to the pound. Well, Spike knew how much they loved the dogs. So he called the kennel, and he learned that 2 months prior, Robin had called them to pick up and board the dogs. So now we know where the dogs went. And he also noticed that John Garth's bed had been slept in and the sheets had been taken off of it. Then Spike checked the refrigerator, and what he found is what really worried him. Madalyn's insulin was in there. She had to have her medication. She was reliant on it. So panicked, he called the pharmacy, but was told that, yeah, these meds have been filled. They actually were filled 3 times in September. So Madalyn was getting her meds, but contacting no one. And there was no publicity around the missing family. Strange. The last contact with the O'Hairs took place on September 29th of 1995. And after that, the cell phone was turned off. Now, Ellen, the vice president, interim president at the time of the American Atheists, she tried to file a missing persons report, but was told by the Austin PD that it had to be a member of the family that filed it, saying to her that you can't report my lawnmower missing. I have to report my lawnmower missing.
Wait. Is that an actual quote that they told her?
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, the lawnmower part, that is an actual quote.
Are you? Wow. Wow.
Yes.
Holy shit. Wow. Okay.
So what's the logical thing to do? Ellen got in contact with Bill, Minister Bill.
Oh, hell.
And she told him, they're missing. You need to file a report, a missing persons report, and do it right away. Bill refused. He told her he had no interest in looking for people that didn't want to be found. Well, he might not have had an interest in their disappearance, but you see, 6 months later, after they vanished, he filed to be appointed trustee and heir of the organization and the family money and assets.
Of course he did.
Fuck you, Bill.
Of course he did. Wow.
So 1995 ended, and there was still no word from Madalyn. So the American Atheist General Headquarters was put up for sale. The IRS, yeah, they came for their pound of flesh too. They had tried to contact the attorneys because they decided that they would allow the tax debt to be settled for $250,000, and they needed an answer if this was agreeable. And they were calling O'Hair's lawyer, and the IRS seemed to take personal, offense at the non-response, and they were angry. And still, no one. They weren't even trying to find the Murray O'Hairs. No one except for Spike Tyson. He was still looking. And they were largely forgotten about until a journalist named John McCormick was tasked with writing an article in the San Antonio Express News on their disappearance. And on August 16th of 1996, around the 1-year anniversary of the disappearance, the paper published the article. See, John McCormick teamed up with an investigator named Tim Young, and they had become obsessed. And for over a year, they continued to try and solve the disappearance in their off time. And their prime suspect was a man named David Waters. September 24th of 1996, after the article ran, Evangelical Minister Bill finally files a missing persons report. Not because he was worried about the family or that it was odd that the dogs were left behind. It was because he was paranoid, like Madalyn. If something had happened to them, then it could happen to him, and he was afraid that the culprits would return and come after him next. When it affected him, he filed.
We're talking about over a year later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they disappeared in August of 1995, and this is September 1996.
Wow.
Bill's a
Wow.
dick.
Wow. And nobody stepped up besides Spike to look for them for this whole first year.
And Spike, and not, yeah, for 1 year, nobody except for Spike was looking for him until John McCormick and Tim Young, the newspaper journalist and the investigators, started looking. And whenever the article was published, I guess Bill got worried, and that's when he finally decided to file a missing persons report. So then the Austin Police Department began an official investigation. But
you're a year behind. Oh my God.
Yeah. But I'm going to tell you, they didn't really try. So now Bill, because now he's worried somebody's going to get him, he starts to kind of pester the cops, insisting that they do more. And Bill will report that even though they had been estranged, while he was on the phone, I have to set this up right.
Oh God.
So Bill, even though he and his mother and all the family had been estranged, he claimed that while he was on the phone with law enforcement to file the missing persons report, he was sitting at his desk with his back to the door. And as he hung up the phone, he heard a voice say, "Thank you." And he turned around to find no one there. Bullshit. And he went to his church and he told of how his godless mother had reached out to him. And then he passed the collection plate. To be honest, I don't think thank you is what Madalyn would have said to him.
Knowing the first half of the story from last week and where we're at now, I'd have to agree with you. I don't think a nice, gentle thank you. I don't think that would have been her fucking response.
She probably would have called him an effing Christer or something, knowing her.
Knowing her.
But yeah, I know. I'm going to tell you, there are villains in this story, but I think Bill is very much a villain in this story. Now, John McCormick and Tim Young were deep into the sleuthing, and they were finding out a lot of things. September 4th of 1995, they found all this stuff out. An ad had appeared in the San Antonio Express News that said 88 Benz 300 SEL, I guess that's select, $15,000 cash firm. That's what the ad said.
Mm-hmm.
And the ad listed John Garth's cell number as the contact. Now, San Antonio real estate agent and ex-cop Mark Sparrow answered the ad. The seller called himself John, and Sparrow said that he was really in a hurry to sell this vehicle and that he could be contacted at Bonnie Jean's, which was a local San Antonio bar.
Okay.
So the next day, September 5th, 1995, the real estate cop, Sparrow, he goes and he meets John Garth, and he buys the Mercedes in a parking lot next to the Warren Inn Apartments in San Antonio. But Mark Sparrow, real estate cop, he thought that the transaction was somehow off. Something was wrong because the seller didn't want to do any paperwork, and he said he wasn't going to the DMV to transfer the title. He just kind of handed him the keys, the clean title, took the money, and off he went.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the blue book value of this car was $45,000.
Damn.
So, of course, the man jumped to get it for $15,000.
Right.
And Sparrow did think it was weird, but not weird enough not to take the deal. And when he was interviewed by private investigator Tim Young, he showed him a picture of John Garth. But the man that sold the car didn't match that picture. And he didn't have a Barry White / Elmer Fudd speech pattern either.
Mm-hmm.
But who the man did look like was Danny Fry. And the Warren Inn Apartments was where Fry was living at the time. So then the PI gets another lucky break. He gets an anonymous tip to check into the tax records. And what he found was that the Murray O'Hairs owed money. They owed lots of money, lots of shell companies, and over $625,000 was missing from various atheist accounts.
Ooh.
And allegedly it had all been taken out by John Garth. Now, this was an anomaly. Only John Garth withdrawing money. And if he was on the run, he was not going to run without Madalyn and without Robin.
Right.
So what in the hell was going on? And the PI got smart. He followed the money. At this point, 18 months had passed. And the Austin PD finally decided to look into the disappearance because Bill was bugging them. He was bugging them to do it.
So he found out all this stuff, and now we're back to where we were whenever he files the missing person, and he's bugging them to pick up the pace.
Oh, no. 18 months later, he's bugging them. So he files after a year and a month after they're missing. And at the 18-month part, he really starts bugging them.
Oh, so we are even. Oh, God.
We're jumping around because I'm telling you what.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I had the time span correctly. Yeah. So they went missing, and now we're 18 months later where he starts coming back in and bugging.
Yeah.
Them.
Yeah, and now the Austin PD decides, okay, all right, we'll actually take a look at this because Bill, you're bugging the shit out of us.
Yeah.
So because apparently they've been looking into it, but not seriously looking into it, and so the Austin PD decided to make a show, and they held a press conference, and they said, "This is only a missing persons case, and if the persons are found, the Austin PD will not reveal their whereabouts out of respect to the family's privacy." So how the hell are we even going to know if you investigated? Bill was so angered by this that he called the police station and he screamed at the officer in charge. And I'm going to quote him. Oh, "How can Madalyn, John, and Robin hide anywhere? Have you seen these three fat people? Robin needs 2 airline seats wherever she goes, and my mother uses the F word in virtually every sentence that comes out of his mouth. How can you seriously say you can't find these people?" End quote.
Holy shit, dude.
My goodness, that doesn't sound very godly to me, does it? To you?
Fucking resentment much?
Now, I'm going to tell you, Bill was not a small man, but he didn't have any problem fat shaming his daughter. You know, perhaps people in glass houses shouldn't chunk French fries, Bill.
Not the fucking French fries, girl. That is going to be my new fucking favorite quote from this episode.
Bill's a dick.
Those in glass houses shouldn't throw French fries.
Asking the cops, "Why can't you find my daughter? She's fat."
Wow.
Really? You're a dick, Bill. That's rude.
Wow.
Lay off French fries, Bill. Idiot. And after that,
no Shelley's opinion.
I'm angry about that. Why are you going to fat shame your kid? I don't care if you like her or not. You don't do that to your kid.
No.
I thought you were a good Christian man, Bill. Pass the plate, Bill. Anyway, that's just a dick move. I don't care who you are. You
no, it is. It is. You don't dig that freaking low at anybody. I don't give a shit, kid or not.
Well, after that, with the family still missing, Bill abandoned the search and went back to tending to his evangelical ministry. He said that he had no more resources and he was pretty much at a dead end. The only way they were going to be found is if the press found them.
Wow.
I don't like Bill. I don't like Bill one bit. Well, let me tell you, the press was still looking into it. John McCormick and Tim Young, they were still looking.
Good for these guys.
Moon, yes. And they were entangled in it now. They had to know the outcome.
Yeah.
And the men soon found out that Robin and John Garth, they were just as complicated financially as Madalyn was. And they caught a break in October of 1996 when the court-appointed receiver for John Garth's estate turned over the cell phone records for the year of 1995. Something the Austin PD could have gotten when they disappeared had they looked.
Yeah.
The men learned that when the family went missing, more than 200 calls to and from John Garth's phone were made, and many of them were to a gold broker in San Antonio. So September 2nd of 1995, we're jumping back because they've just found this out.
Okay.
While in San Antonio, John Murray had wired $600,000 from an offshore account in New Zealand to a San Antonio bank. And he had used that money to buy $600,000 worth of gold coins from San Antonio gold broker named Corey Tickner. And this gold request was very specific. All had to be 1 ounce weight with equal amounts of Canadian maple leaf gold coins, South African Krugerrands, and American Eagle gold coins. Now, Tickner, yeah, very, very odd. Very odd. Now, Tickner, being suspicious of this strange request, called his lawyer to see if there could be anything tied to this that was illegal. Lawyer took a look and he didn't really see anything. Never hadn't heard anything around anywhere. So, finding nothing, the lawyer's advice to Tickner was, don't take a check. So the transaction proceeded. And there was one small problem, though. He could only get $500,000 worth of the requested coins. The other $100,000 would have to arrive in 2 to 3 weeks. So on September 29th at 12:24 p.m., John Garth makes a 7-minute long phone call to the Atheist headquarters. Most likely this is when he was speaking to Ellen.
Okay.
And that was the last call that he made on his cellular phone. Later that day, John Garth takes delivery of $500,000 worth of gold coins from Corey Tickner. He never returned to collect the final $100,000 worth of coins. Tickner thought it odd, but John Garth really wasn't on a schedule to come back and retrieve it, so he just had it there for whenever he came back. September 30th of 1995, 2:30 p.m., Danny Fry makes a phone call on John Garth's phone to his daughter in Florida. October 1995. The torso of an unidentified man is pulled from the Trinity River in Dallas, without a face, fingerprints, or clothing. And the corpse remained unidentified for 3 years. 1 year later, October 1996, Robin's red Porsche is found at the Austin airport during a routine stolen car sweep conducted by airport security. It was towed to the police impound lot. The car had sat there for over a year, and the Austin PD did a cursory search, but they weren't concerned. They must have gotten in the plane and flown away.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, all right. I guess I could understand that a little bit more. I mean, people who get one-way tickets and never return and just like do some out.
Right.
Okay. All right. I was about to say, who the hell doesn't search something that's been sitting there for a goddamn year? Sorry, but
That's all right.
wow.
That's all right.
Anyways.
December 1996, the IRS revokes the tax-exempt status for 2 atheist nonprofits. One was the Charles E. Stevens American Atheist Library, and the other was for the Society of Separatists. Revokes both their nonprofit standings.
Okay.
January 31st of 1997, Bill abandons his efforts to control the atheist holdings and Madalyn's estate, and he withdraws his petition for guardianship of the assets. February 1997, gone almost 3 years. 3 years. The IRS came for all the money, the family home, and all the storage units. Everything was emptied and auctioned, and they even kicked out Spike Tyson. You see, Spike had keys to Madalyn's house, and he had been living there intermittently, and he was maintaining the residence. He was mowing the lawn. He was keeping up with the mail. He was caring for the dogs that he had picked up from the kennel. But the IRS spared nothing. They kicked Spike out, but they demanded he leave his clothes in the home because that was considered an asset.
Like the clothes he had on.
He could wear the clothes he had on, and that was it. Any personal item that was in there belonged to them. So Spike, after doing all of this stuff, he is still, boom, right back where he was. Now, David Waters had stolen some of the art, and he had tried to sell it, but he really wasn't connected enough to know a fence that was right to get the proper value. And much of the collection that the IRS got ended up in the Library of Congress. Now, December 1997, the IRS has found out about the gold coins that Tickner has, and they seized the $100,000 in gold coins that John Garth left there. June 1998, Nightline took the story national with a show that relied heavily on the findings of Young and McCormick. The family, it appeared, had stayed at the Warren Inn. Madalyn had even been seen in Bonnie Jean's, which was the bar across the street.
Right.
And Bonnie Jean Davis told a story on that show about how she had helped Madalyn, who was using a walker, into the restroom one afternoon. July 1998, the house at 3702 Greystone Drive that Madalyn, John Garth, and Robin shared was sold for $240,000 to satisfy its creditors. September 1998, atheist leaders agreed to sell their 16,500 square foot building on Cameron Road to the AIDS Services of Austin for $800,000. October 2nd, 1998, David Waters contacts the Austin Chronicle, agrees to talk to McCormick. October 7th, 1998. Waters then shows him dozens of pages of correspondence dating back to 1993 and 1994 that Waters had stolen from the American Atheist headquarters. He's trying to help him out.
Oh, yeah.
Help him find the culprit. This guy's got some nerve.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on October 27th of 1998, Waters has a probation hearing in front of the Travis County Magistrate Jim Coronado, who lectures Waters that if his cable bill of $85 is too high, that if he wants to stay out of jail, he better get current on the restitution payments to the American Atheist. Because remember, he's a felon, so he has to check in with that parole officer.
Mm-hmm.
He got 10 years. So he's going there and he's doing his probation and stuff like that. And they said, you need to get up on these or you're going to get chunked back in the can. And then another tip came to John McCormick. A man gave him a phone call, and on the other end of the line, the man said that he had a friend who had also disappeared about the same time as O'Hair. And that man had gone to see David Waters. Turns out the man on the phone was the brother of Danny Fry. He was calling because Danny had told him that if he hadn't returned by a certain date, that something was wrong. And knowing that Waters was an enemy to the O'Hair family, the reporter alerted the police. And just on a hunch, the reporter requested the police do a DNA test on the Trinity River torso. And Danny Fry's brother gave a sample of his DNA to compare it. The body that was there, the headless torso, was that of Danny Fry.
Oh, shit.
And this revelation broke open the case.
Oh, shit. I did not know that part. Mm-hmm. Wow. So, okay, at this point, his body's been there for 3 years, right?
3 years. An unidentified, headless, handless torso that washed up on the Trinity River banks.
Wow. And so this is the brother of that.
Yes,
that's Danny Fry.
Yes, Danny Fry's brother has called because he knows that McCormick is looking into this. I mean, and he's like, look, here's what it is. I haven't heard my brother. He said he was not back by this date to call the police, that something was very, very wrong. And remember, Danny Fry had a daughter.
Yeah.
And he hadn't even talked to his daughter. So now at this point, the FBI is interested. And they were actually already looking into Waters on firearms possession. And now they were looking into him for murder as well. The FBI executed a search warrant on the apartment of David Waters and his girlfriend, and the search produced various caliber ammunition. And Waters, a convicted felon, was arrested for the contents of his apartment, and the contents of his apartment were seized. Now, at the same time, Gary Carr, remember he got mentioned first. Remember Gary Carr, David Waters, and Danny Fry, they'd all kind of joined up together.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, Gary Carr was contacted, and he lived in Walled Lake, Michigan, and he was interviewed. And as a hardened criminal, he spent the last 30 years in prison for kidnapping a daughter of a judge. So Carr's a bad dude. That man right there, that's a bad dude.
He kidnapped the daughter of a judge?
He kidnapped the daughter of a judge, and he had been in prison for 30 years. And I'm going to tell you right now that Carr wasn't talking. And after being read his rights, Carr was asked to just listen to the information being discussed. After he heard what they knew, Carr decided that he would talk. And he implicated David Waters in the death of the O'Hairs. Carr went so far as to sign an affidavit and draw a map of where the bodies could be found.
Oh, shit.
Carr was arrested for possession of 2 firearms and was taken to jail. And there he sat in a Detroit jail awaiting trial. They decided to dismiss the weapons charge. And Carr was transferred to the custody of the U.S. Marshals in Austin, Texas, to stand trial for the death of the O'Hairs. And after a 3-week trial, Carr was found guilty of conspiracy to commit extortion, traveling interstate to commit violent acts, money laundering, and interstate transportation of stolen property. And it was all related to the O'Hair case. However, he was acquitted of kidnapping because at the time the bodies of the O'Hairs had not been found yet.
Hadn't been located, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then he was sentenced to 2 life sentences in August 2000 by U.S. District Judge Sam Sparks. Now,
for all the other stuff, he was
all the other crap. Yeah, it all adds up.
Phew,
includes the kidnap, everything. All adds up.
Okay.
Ultimately, the murder investigation now became focused on David Waters. This was in conjunction with his public use of firearms charge, and that was enough to get him sentenced to prison for 8 years before he could do any further damage or kill somebody else.
Right.
And federal agents for the FBI and the IRS has their hand in this too, along with the police, concluded that Waters was indeed the mastermind. Waters, Carr, and Fry had kidnapped all 3 of the O'Hairs and forced them to withdraw the missing funds. This is what the FBI and them think. Gone on several huge shopping sprees with the O'Hairs' money and credit cards, and then that they had murdered all 3 people. That was the working theory.
Okay.
So Waters was arrested and found guilty of kidnapping, robbery, and murder in the O'Hair case, and he was sentenced to 80 years in prison. And he was also ordered to pay back a total of $543,665 to the United Secularists of America and to the estates of Madalyn Murray O'Hair, John Garth Murray, and Robin Murray O'Hair. God, that's a mouthful.
You know, would have been just like perfect if that number would have ended in 666. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say.
That's okay. However, it
would have been hilarious. Sorry.
Yeah. It's unlikely that these debts were going to be paid because Waters had no ability to earn money while he was in prison.
Right.
So, as part of a plea agreement on a charge of conspiracy, Waters agreed to tell the authorities what actually happened to the O'Hairs. And he agreed to disclose the location of the bodies. And here's what he said when he started talking. Waters had 2 accomplices, Gary Carr and Danny Fry. They had kidnapped the family at gunpoint straight from their home in broad daylight. They were held captive in the hotel at the Warren Inn Apartments in faraway San Antonio for nearly a month, where John Garth's cooperation was extorted by using threats against his mother. They made him, they threatened to kill her if he didn't do what they said.
He didn't do it.
John Garth was forced to drain funds from the American Atheist account and into Waters' pockets. They forced John Garth to exchange the cash for $600,000 in gold coins, of which they were only able to pick up $500,000 worth due to a delay in the shipment. They stashed the coins in a rental facility. And from here, there wasn't really much place else to go but murder and concealment. Because, you see, Waters said that Carr raped Robin and accidentally broke her neck in the process. They had wrapped her in a bedspread and put her in the trunk of Waters' car. When John Garth couldn't find Robin, and he demanded where she was, and they began to fight. And he began to struggle with Carr and Waters. And then Madalyn joined in, trying to help her son. Both Waters and Carr beat, strangled, and suffocated John Garth. And they killed Madalyn last. She was strangled, suffocated, and beaten viciously. All were loaded into the trunk and driven to a North Austin storage unit where Carr did the dirty work of cutting the O'Hairs into pieces small enough to conceal in a 55-gallon metal drum.
Oh, God.
And left them there until they could figure out a spot to dump them. 3 days later, Danny Fry was killed. He was drinking and talking too loudly about the crime in a restaurant. And Waters said, "We knew it was only a matter of time before he got us caught." So to keep him from being identified, Carr cut off Danny Fry's head and hands and dumped his body in the Trinity River east of Dallas. Carr and Waters then took the bodies of the O'Hairs to a remote piece of property and buried them inside the drums in an unknown location in Texas. Then, after that, seeing their problems were over, they went on a spending spree with $80,000 of the $500,000 in gold coins they had extorted from the Atheists. And they hid the rest of the loot in a suitcase that they stashed in a storage locker at the Burnett Road self-storage. So in January 2001, the remains of 4 bodies were found on a cattle ranch near Camp Wood, Texas, in the southern part of the state. Texas investigators positively identified the remains of those as Madalyn Murray O'Hair, John Garth Murray, and Robin Murray O'Hair. John, Garth, and Robin had suffered blunt force trauma and were suffocated. Madalyn had been subjected to severe blunt force trauma. Riddled with ligature marks, her body was found burned and dismembered at mid-thigh level.
Damn.
But Madalyn had had a hip replacement, and the serial number on her artificial hip remained intact.
Oh, shit.
So the product number identified Madalyn's body. Now, all 3 of them had been dismembered with a saw.
Wow.
And the remains exhibited such extensive mutilation and successive decomposition that the identification had to be made through dental records and DNA testing. But not Madalyn's. They used the number. Also, in that grave, the severed head and hands of a 4th person were discovered. Their last remains of Danny Fry. The corpses were so severely butchered that they were intended to never be identified by the police. Waters and his 2 accomplices had so carefully and meticulously disposed of the corpses that most likely they would not ever have been found unless Waters told them where to look. Now, Waters died of lung cancer in prison in 2003. And in keeping with Madalyn's wishes, she was cremated, or what was left of her remains were cremated. And no one prayed over her remains, and she was buried in a field with no marker. So in addition to removing public prayer from school, Madalyn Murray O'Hair filed quite a few other court cases. Murray versus Curlett, which challenged the Bible reading and prayer recitation in public schools.
Mm-hmm.
Murray versus the United States, to force the Federal Communications Commission to extend fairness doctrine so that atheists could have equal time with religion on radio and television. Murray versus Nixon. Yes, she sued President Nixon.
She sued the Pope, so it doesn't surprise me.
She challenged his weekly religious services in the White House. She also did O'Hair versus Payne, which challenged NASA's religious use of the space program to require astronauts to read the Bible during a space flight. There was O'Hair versus Cook, who challenged the opening prayer ceremony at city council meetings in Austin, Texas. There was O'Hair versus Blumenthal, that challenged the inclusion of the phrase, "In God We Trust," on U.S. currency.
Damn.
O'Hair versus Hill, to have removed from the Texas Constitution a provision requiring that belief of God in persons, that requiring a belief in God of persons that held public office. That's a tongue twister. O'Hair versus Andrus, which challenged the use of the national park facilities for the Pope to hold Roman Catholic Mass on the Mall of Washington, D.C.
Here she goes with the damn. She goes with the Pope again.
That's right. She didn't want him holding Mass on the Mall of Washington, D.C. That's government land. There was O'Hair versus Clemens, where she tried to remove the nativity scene that was displayed at the rotunda in the Capitol building in Austin, Texas. And of course, Carter et al. Versus Broadlawns Medical Center, a defense in secular medicine in the 72-year history of Polk County Hospital. She didn't want them to ever hire a priest.
What? What the hell?
So, let me wrap this up. When you mention atheism to most people, the only name they can think of is Madalyn Murray O'Hair. And God, if there is a God, loves Madalyn Murray O'Hair, because for 35 years, she was the worthiest of adversaries. She made his believers work harder than ever on his behalf. She spoke in her faith in man and in all of man's abilities to transform the world by his own efforts. Madalyn lived a life in defiance of convention, a life that was recklessly authentic and accepting of the consequences. She had been willing to state the awful truth as she understood it, no matter what might come. Madalyn was indeed a religious phenomenon, in the same way that antimatter is an expression of matter. She was a black hole of belief. And long ago, Madalyn understood the source of her power. She was a mirror of doubt. And holding up that mirror to America, she had changed our country and shaken our ideas about who we were. Madalyn O'Hair said, religion has caused more misery to all of mankind in every stage of human history than any other single idea. And she is not wrong. And as you peel away each layer of Madalyn, Evelyn, Mays, Roth's, Murray, O'Hair,
Damn.
what remains is exactly what you are looking for. The Madalyn inside. She loved to fight, but I'm not so sure she loved to be hated. One of her last journal entries in her diary states, I had just wanted one person somewhere, sometime, to understand me, and I had never found any. She never had a relationship with anyone that she didn't have to take care of, never had anyone to help her, only leech off her. She kept her family afloat and brought them to wealth. And if things went wrong, then responsibility always went to her shoulders. No one had her back. She was never given anything close to the approximation of love or caring, and never had a positive family bond or relationship. She was used and profited off of. And maybe that's why she was out to get him. She was complex, really like her. She was complex, messy, prickly, charming, repelling, and altogether very much a human. And I admire her courage. People would say to her, so what, Madalyn? It's just a little cross. And Madalyn would reply, what if it were just a little swastika? And the only thing Madalyn loved more than a good fight was a grand spectacle with her at the center. And this was, as she might have put it, pretty goddamn grand.
Holy shit, Shelly. You know what? Wow. I'm gonna piggyback off of everything that you were pretty much saying at the end there. This woman, I'm not gonna say I didn't know, or I'm gonna say I did not know a whole lot about her going into this. I knew of, and I said this in the last episode, I knew of who she was, what she was about, what happened to her in the end of the story. I knew all that. I didn't know all this little stuff in between. I came into this under the assumption that, you know, she was the most hated woman in America because she was the most hated woman for a reason.
And she did have a reason.
Well, she did. But I think that you're exactly right in that end. She is human. She's not wrong in what she was talking about. You know, about you can't have this there. You can't do that because it's government property. It's government this. It's the argument, as you said in the first episode, the argument of separation of church and state. That's what made her become so hated, and what labels her as a ferocious female for this ferocious female month.
And is she not a wonderfully ferocious
She's a
female?
wonderfully ferocious female. I have a lot of respect for her. She went up against some big. She fucking sued the Pope.
She sued the Pope every damn chance she got, and she picketed that son of a bitch every time he came down. Oh, real quickly. I actually forgot to put this in. Doesn't anybody want to know where the money went that was stashed in the storage locker in the Burnett storage locker?
Yeah.
Oh, Waters and Carr, they never got to spend it. Because see, when they were at that restaurant talking about the crime, they talked about where they put it. And 3 hooligans heard about it, found the storage locker, opened it with the storage key, made off with the cash, spent it all in Vegas.
Stop.
They never got to spend the money. Madalyn gave them a big old one of these from the grave.
I think that the other thing is like, I mean, what happened after she disappeared is a shitty fucking situation. I think that was handled absolutely wrong. I mean, who waits a year and a month to actually go and file a missing person report on your own mother, regardless of what y'all's relationship is? I mean, I understand, but I mean, come on, human to human, even. I don't give a shit what you think about
I'm gonna
her.
tell you what, like, I don't know, and I've damn near done this. I don't know where you were for 3 days. If I hadn't blown up your phone, I'm filing a report. And then you know what? If you're fine, I'm gonna whip your ass for making me worry.
I would never do that to you, Shelley. Okay, maybe I have once.
I would stalk you, so I would find you eventually.
No, I mean, I think this is one of those that, like, yeah, we're to our discussion time and everything like that, but I don't think that I think you and I see her in the same light. So much admiration and respect for what she did. You know, the courage that it took to stand up to who she stood up to and face what she faced to become such a ferocious woman in her life. Did it ultimately lead to what ended up happening to her? Yeah, yes, it did. You know, it put her in the path of those wrong people. But my God, what a life.
What a stamp on history.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I'm actually a little disappointed to let Madalyn go because I have been writing and rewriting. And the draft you heard was the, I think, 7th draft that I'd written of this second part because I wanted it just right. Yeah. I wanted you to understand her. And then when I thought, I was like, man, I can't find any more layers. And that's where I came down to it. I'm like, wait, Madalyn was very polarizing. You either loved her or you hated her.
Very.
And I got to tell you, I hate a lot of the, scammy things she did, like trying to take over the Atheist College and trying to, get, this thing, the magazine. But for the things that she did that was exactly right, I got to admire that. And she was a product of the people around her. To be honest, she never had anybody who had her back. If it happened, everything fell to her from pretty much the day she got here. And
I was just about to say what got put in the comments. Definitely ahead of her time. Pam just said definitely ahead of her time. Yeah, 100%.
And I'm actually very sorry and I left out stories, y'all. I left out lots and lots of stories because, again, this was originally 148 pages. And I got it down to 25 for the first and 28 for this one, or 27 for this one.
We would have had like a 4-parter.
This would have been a 5 to 6 part if I would have put in everything. But she is fascinating. And she will do things that will make you go, Madalyn, what the hell are you doing? Don't do that. That's awful. But what most people know is those awful things.
Right.
And the result of it. And then the most stay-at-home woman in America, they don't know what brought her to where she was. Go ahead.
So you told what happened to Carr? Is he still alive?
Oh, Carr's dead. He died in prison.
Oh, he's dead.
Yeah.
Okay. Dead. Okay. So they're both.
I didn't really see. And the thing is that he's not mentioned much. And it's only to me, Carr was the one who actually stayed in the room with Madalyn. And he didn't have to do much. She was an old lady, but she was cantankerous. She'd hit him with her cane and that kind of shit. But to make her behave, he would threaten Robin. And he always was watching Robin. And so John Garth would stay close to Robin and Madalyn would be watching them both because Carr was the one. And it's Waters' allegation that Robin was raped. There is no proof of that, but that is what Waters says that Carr did. But Carr was the one who was in the room with them, keeping them under control, keeping a gun on them. And they think that John Garth was just naive enough that they had him convinced that if you do everything we say, we're going to let you go. And they think John Garth had bought into it. And so he wasn't calling out for help. He wasn't doing all this stuff because I think they had little naive John Garth or big naive Elmer Fudd, Barry White, John Garth convinced that they were just going to let him go if he'd just do what they said. And that they weren't going to hurt his family, if they just do what they said.
Yeah.
And of course, Waters already knew what Madalyn would do when crossed. I don't think there was ever any intention of letting them go.
Oh, no, without a doubt.
So, yes, I am actually kind of sad to say goodbye to Madalyn, but she's a fantastic, fascinating story.
She is. I commend you for a very well 2-parter episode that you've done. So if y'all missed the first episode, go back and watch the first episode and learn about Madalyn, the person prior to all the American Atheist type stuff and how she got to that path and what started her on this path. It's absolutely fascinating when you put both of those together. But I commend you on an amazing job. Well done.
Thank you very much.
I enjoyed the hell out of this one. I have mad respect for her.
I do too. So with that, why don't you tell them everything they need to know, Blake?
Sounds good. All right, a couple of quick shout outs real quick. I want to mention yet again, we're going to keep doing this for a couple of more weeks. 2 locations, Broadhead Manor and the Old Park Hotel in Ballinger, Texas. If you watch past episodes, we've had the owners of these locations on our podcast as special guests. So shout out to Dan and Connie LaFave and Bill Walter, Mr. Hashtag Sir Sexy himself. Yeah, hashtag Sir Sexy. They're attempting to raise some money to help with the restoration of their locations so that groups like ours can continue to investigate them, as well as be able to host gatherings like charity events and all that kind of stuff. So they are looking for a little bit of help. So in the footer of all of our episodes, if you're listening on the audio version, you can see the link for the GoFundMe's that have been set up for these locations. So if you got $1, $5, $10, anything like that, whatever you can donate to help for the preservation of these locations.
Small donations work too.
Exactly, they add up in the long run. So, and if you're wondering where those GoFundMe links are at, you can either go to the Broadhead Manor or the Old Park Hotel Facebook page, and first give them a follow, and secondly, you can scroll down and you'll see the GoFundMe's. If not, wherever you listen to your podcast, you can go find our episode and it'll be in the footer. Secondly, we are going to be speaking at our next Paracon because we just wrapped up our last Paracon last weekend.
Another one.
We are in July 14th through the 16th. You are going to be able to catch us at Kansas City, Missouri at Metacon. They are going to have a wonderful lineup of speakers. Andrea Perrin with from the Conjuring House. They're going to have John Zaffis. They're going to have all
Travis
kinds
Walton.
us Travis Walton.
Yes. Right up there with no, but we will be there. We will be speaking. So.
Yep, and they're also going to have 40 plus vendors there and over 30,000 square feet of shopping fun and healing too. They're going to have some healers there. So all of our events, I don't have any event announcements because all of our events at the moment are completely sold out. So we've got to get some more on the schedule. So make sure you follow our Eventbrite page so you can be notified when those events go on sale, because they are selling out quick if you want to go investigating with us. So make sure, speaking of which, you're following us across all social media channels. We got a lot of great stuff coming out for later of the year that we're only going to put on one channel. So if you're only following us on one channel, you're only getting a fraction of the content available. So find the Linktree link in the descriptions or the About Me or the bio sections of our social media pages and be taken directly where you want to go, including those public investigations and also our Patreon, which is just $5 a month. And for that, you instantly unlock just under 100. I think it's over 100 now.
It's over 100.
Patreon exclusive content that you will only get on that, which basically you get to spend an extra hour a week with us. I mean, come on.
Aren't you excited?
Yeah, right? But you get all the up-to-date information when tickets are going to be on sale and all that stuff. So as well, make sure you leave us a review wherever you're listening or watching us from. The more you review us, the more we're pushed out to people and the more content we can create in the future. So as always, any questions, comments, stories, concerns you'd like to share, those can be submitted to the evppod@gmail.com. That's THEEVPPOD@gmail.com.
Go and push that subscribe button on YouTube and like, share, and subscribe. So, as always, thank you so much for joining us on Everything Vaguely Paranormal. We appreciate you. And I'm Shelley Pruitt. And for my partner in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith, and the soon to return Mr. Ryan Roberts, and to our wonderful producer in the green room, pushing the buttons and making us look good, the fabulous Miss Brittany. We want to thank you for being here with us tonight. And as always, we will see you next Tuesday.